You are listening to the Garnet and Old show every Thursday, 7 o'clock. I'm Ryan. That's my brother from another mother, Vince. How are you today, sir?
Good. They're watching, they're listening. Maybe they're on spring break like my family is right now.
Mm.
And everybody's in the house and the food's being eaten and the house is getting dirty and sitting by the pool. Maybe you're not on spring break yet and you still have that to look forward to. But yeah, we welcome everybody into Garnet and Old. No inside info, no contacts, no problem. We do have one of our contacts going to be on here shortly in a little bit. The one and only Doug Rohan, because there's been a lot of stuff going around or coming out and being filed in terms of the ACC FSU lawsuit. So it's time to bring our buddy Doug back, and he'll be back here in a little bit.
Yeah. Now, for those of you who are not one for waiting, we want to talk about something else real quick. I promise we'll just touch on this.
Well, you want to
Uh,
talk about this?
yes, that's a subscribe to the channel. Help us get to the 1,000 mark, and also drop comments in the comment section because we
Yep.
want to hear from you during the show. Obviously, anytime we have Doug on, there's going to be a lot of questions
A lot
around
of questions.
the lawsuit and everything. So start popping them in there now. Get them ready for when we bring Doug in here in just a moment. But before we get started, we always like to start the show with a little bit of non sequitur talk to get people a chance to get into the stream here. So
People know what we're doing.
last week, I challenged Vince. More so, I guilt tripped Vince into watching Lost, or at least beginning to watch Lost. Now, I've watched it several times over in the past. Love it. Great show. Uh, Vince finally said, you know what? I think his exact words is, I'll watch 2 episodes, and if I like it, there will be more, and if I don't, it'll be 2 episodes. So, Vince, tell the people want to know, did you enjoy, I believe you watched a few episodes of Lost. What do you think?
Yeah, so this is kind of like last week on
Yeah.
Garnet and Old.
Yeah.
I did watch it, and I watched 3 episodes of Lost. And it did catch me. I will say that it did catch me. I am going to watch more, and I intended to watch more last night. But like I said, there was quite a bit of revelry at the house here
Mhm.
in the last few days, so I did not get to it. But yes, I've watched 3 episodes of Lost. I know. Hey, sometimes you're on the cutting edge of a series, and you're
Yeah.
there at the beginning, and you're one of the pioneers of that series. And sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're coming along on the you're kind of bringing up the rear, and I'm bringing up the rear on Lost.
Hey now.
Yeah, but yeah, but so far so good. What do you want to know?
Yeah, so Vince, before we if you guys have any not any real spoilers or real comments or real guesses, but put ridiculous stuff if you've seen the show that funny predictions or funny spoilers that aren't real in the comments. Don't spoil it for Vince. So Vince, I just want to know before we get into bringing Doug in,
Yeah.
what's going on with the island? What's the situation? What do you think is happening?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I know when I say these things, people are going to laugh because everybody's watched this series but me, right? Everybody in the whole world, maybe outside of the world, everyone's watched it but me. So let me just give you some general ideas, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this plane goes down. Okay, whatever. And so I'm still getting introduced to the characters,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the characters are well done. And I know that the girl is like the fugitive. I know that. I know that about her. Um, but the one guy, for me, the one guy that I looked at with a little bit of a jaundiced eye was the old man that found the dog.
Yeah, John Locke,
Yeah, I don't know what their names are per se
the
yet.
bald guy.
The bald guy, right? A little creepy. He's a little creepy. It says some things that are a little creepy as well.
Mhm.
But I have some theories about him, and the fact that he's a little too calm for this whole scenario.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think is what's the situation? Why the weird things on the island? That's the last thing I'll ask.
Yeah. Also, yeah, I don't know what to make of that yet. So there's some kind of experimentation going on there. Whether it's whether it's you know uh, with animals or something like that, or it's some kind of psychological experiment with people.
Interesting.
And there's no way to get people to sign up for this crap, right?
Mhm.
So there's a nefarious way to basically populate the test cases.
I love it, Vince. I love your prediction. And guess what? When I was watching the show way back in the 2010s, I had during my time watching it, probably 15 different thoughts and predictions and opinions, and I don't think any of them were correct.
Yeah,
I'm not sure that the makers of the show know what was correct at some
yeah.
point. But
As it went down in flames, like the
yes.
plane did.
Now here's the
Um,
thing.
no,
Our
hold on
friend
before you
Doug,
go
we're
on.
going to bring him.
Hold on. So
Yeah,
the other thing I was going to say um, is that I anticipate every theory I have to be totally wrong, and that's the way it should be,
yeah,
right? Because that's how you know you're watching a
a good
show
show.
that's got some intellectual power behind it.
And now I'm going to echo some of our commenters because Vince, and then we'll bring Doug in here. But um, very similar bar of quality and flow of show as Game of Thrones. Several excellent seasons that are
Hmm.
on par with some of the best shows that have ever happened.
Hmm.
And then ending seasons mixed. Some people love it, some people hate it. I would give it a solid at last two seasons, a 7.5
Hmm.
out of 10. Still enjoyable, but just like Game of Thrones,
You
there's a
got to
lot of
finish
like,
it.
yeah, you have to finish it. But overall, if you were to average everything, most people who have watched it all the way through would say, yeah, it was worth a first time watch through at minimum. So
Yeah.
uh,
So let me.
that's how I
So
feel about
let's. Yeah. So let's equate that, because I've had this conversation
it.
with some friends about other shows. Take Game of Thrones, for example. If I'm the type of person that's going to commit that kind of time to that kind of thing, I'm going to finish it. And while I may not have enjoyed as much the final season, I'm still going to finish it.
Yeah,
I mean, why not?
you like the
And then there,
characters.
and yes, and then there are people that are like, no, I'm not going to devote. And I get it. Everybody gets to make up their own mind.
Yeah,
Walking Dead, the same way.
yeah.
I watched that to the bitter end. Were the final couple seasons a real slog? Yes, some of them were. But
Hmm.
I finished it because what you're looking at here is a guy who finished what he starts.
Old Dad writes, and what the heck are we
Thanks,
talking about? All right, so Old
thanks, old
Dad,
dad.
you probably just joined here in the last couple minutes. We're about to bring Doug Rohan on from Rohan Law, but we want to give people a second to join and make sure everyone was in the chat and everything before we brought him in. So we did a little non sequitur. Vince is watching Lost for the first time through,
I am.
and I was just asking his opinion and his thoughts after 3 episodes. So we will get to
I'm
the FSU talk, I promise. In fact, I
I'm
think we're going to get
watching
to it real soon.
I'm watching Leave It to Beaver for the first time. I had no idea this show even existed. And that Eddie Haskell, he's quite the character.
Yeah, and Vince, I will. One thing I will say about
Old dad
uh,
is lost. There we
yeah,
go.
Old Dad is Lost. One thing, Old Dad, did you watch Lost? Did you like it? Put it in the comments. One last thing I will say about Lost is one thing that never changes throughout the whole series in quality is the characters and your care for them. Similar to Game of Thrones, right? You might have gotten to the end of Game of Thrones and been like, I didn't like the way they wrote the end series, but you still love Tyrion. You still love Daenerys. You still love Jon Snow. That same thing in The Lost. It's you love the characters and you want to see what happens to them, even if what happens to them in the end is not what you expected. So
Yeah,
that's the important thing.
that's exactly right. There are some characters that I want to see ultimately what their uh final role is going to be,
Yeah,
whatever that is. Either they're getting beheaded, which can happen early in a show,
yeah,
no spoilers, or you're going to make it till the very end, even though there's no rhyme or reason why you should have.
absolutely. Now, Vince, I do think it's time to get into some Florida State talk. Now, lot going on in the ACC versus FSU lawsuit and the back and forth and the filings and nonstop chaos. Now we do have friend and guest of the show, attorney Doug Rohan, coming in and joining the show. And he's going to break it all down for us on the latest in the last week or so of what the status of the lawsuit and filings are. So please start popping your questions into the comments. Vince, are we ready to bring in Doug?
Yeah, bring him in. I'm sending a message here real quick, so you can handle this for a moment, right?
Yeah.
But I want to say, first of all, how amazing and how dedicated is Doug, where he is flying all over the place, and that he's got to throw a little food down the gullet here before he gets a chance to go on the next show. Like, he's in the car wash, he's making it all happen. We appreciate all the expertise, all the dedication.
And appearing here live on the Garnet and Old show as of right now, pro bono, I hope.
Yeah, we hope so.
Because we have no inside
Otherwise,
info,
get the
no
super
cash
chat
flow,
going.
no problem. Doug,
will not be sending you a bill
today?
for tonight's session, I promise.
Yes. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing great. Pleasure to be here with you guys. I appreciate Vince reaching out and asking me to come on, and it's exciting to have some more stuff to talk about. And the tea is getting hot and the chili is getting spicy. So we've got some good stuff to talk about regarding what's going on lately in Florida.
Very nice.
Yeah,
well, kick us off.
There's been a lot going on.
There's been a lot going on. So I guess, Doug, give us roundabouts. What's happened, let's say in the last week and a half, because there's been a lot of updates. Give us the rundown, the 10,000 foot view of what we got.
All right. So what's happened in the last 10 days, and the reason why we're chatting again today is because we're back in Florida now. This is the one with the active filings that took place. Friday of last week, the ACC filed a protective order, an objection to the discovery that Florida State propounded. That's your first SAT word of the night, propounded. That's the questions that FSU is asking the ACC to provide evidence of and discovery for. And then following that, on Tuesday, I think it was Tuesday, because we're in Thursday now, Florida State filed a response to the ACC's motion to stay in Leon County. So remember, we have a North Carolina case and a Florida case, and they're tracking very similar. And every time there's a motion, there's a response or an objection to that motion. So the ACC had previously filed, much like Florida State filed in North Carolina, the ACC had filed in Florida a request for the judge to dismiss the complaint or alternatively put it on ice while we deal with this case in North Carolina. And so now this is FSU's opportunity to respond to that, and they threw some haymakers at the ACC.
I just wanted to clarify, put the definition up there, propounded, to offer for discussion or consideration. So thank you.
This is the perfect money-making scheme, Ryan. We are going to create some Garnet and Old legal flashcards, and we are going to test everybody at the end of each show. That's awesome.
So what can we expect, Doug, the next steps based on what you just told us? What do you believe in the next week and a half, if anything? What do you think is next?
So the first thing that's very important coming up a week from today, March 22nd, the judge in North Carolina in Mecklenburg County will have the opportunity to hear from both parties about the North Carolina motion to dismiss or stay. So the ACC is asking, or Florida State is asking for the North Carolina case to be put on ice and wait until the Florida case is decided. Now, you'll remember one of the big issues here is the ACC filed first. So the case in North Carolina is going to be about whether or not filing first mattered, whether or not the ACC breaching its constitution and bylaws by not taking a vote before filing mattered. And then the judge there is going to decide, do I dismiss the case? Probably not likely, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Do we stay the case? That's what I would consider a huge win for Florida State. Or are both of Florida State's motions denied and this case moves forward in North Carolina? Now, the similarity here is that the Maryland case went through these first initial steps as well. And in 2013, the judge and the Court of Appeals in North Carolina said, no, North Carolina is the correct place for this to move forward. So it'll be a test of the FSU attorneys to draw a distinction or distinguish this fact pattern from what happened in Maryland to determine whether or not North Carolina should proceed.
Does Maryland have similar state laws as the Sunshine State laws in Maryland? And how does that play in?
I don't know. I have not done that much research. What I will say is that there are some similarities. For instance, Maryland was arguing sovereign immunity, just like Florida State is arguing sovereign immunity. The North Carolina Court of Appeals said, thanks, but no thanks. We're going to go ahead and move forward in North Carolina. Sovereign immunity does not carry. One of the things that Florida State is already arguing is, well, Maryland was the only ACC school in Maryland, whereas Florida State and Miami are two schools in Florida. I don't know if that in and of itself is persuasive, but it is one way that Florida State is already trying to distinguish the two situations.
In addition to that, because of the media partner also doing hella business in Florida as well, that I think they're throwing that as icing on the cake too, to see if there's some more leverage there. Who knows whether that's going to carry or not.
ESPN is out of Bristol, Connecticut. Disney and ABC are out of Burbank, California. So yes, the FSU is tossing in those aspects as well to say, look, the world of sports, the ESPN world of sports is in Florida. Disney has a substantial presence in Florida with Disney World. Most of the broadcast rights that we're talking about between Miami and Florida State were from Florida. So there's some arguments. I don't know that those are the strongest arguments.
When you and I read your posts, of course, because that's what I do. And if you're not following Doug, please everybody follow him at Rohan Law PC on X, because he will break stuff down for you. Let me throw this next SAT word up, or legal SAT word for you, or legal SAT phrase: ultra vires acts, right? Beyond the powers. Can you go into how that plays in and what you read about that? And this has to do with the the late night filing, right? The late night filing. Go ahead.
So in the last response in North Carolina, the ACC submitted some affidavits. And this is one of my favorite things about competing litigation in the two jurisdictions. What they're filing over here oftentimes contradicts or says the opposite of what they want to say over here. And the ACC, unfortunately, keeps getting in their own way in this regard. But the ACC stated in their North Carolina filing, you know what? Florida State, you're right. There was a race to the courthouse. And guess what? We beat you. Ha ha, nanny, nanny, boo boo. Well, now in Florida, Florida State is taking that part out of the equation and showing it to the Florida judge, saying, this is exactly why you have to deny the North Carolina first filing issue. Now, the North Carolina filing took place the night before Florida took place. The North Carolina filing took place without a vote. And so in their amended complaint, they said, we went back on January 12th to 10 very specific members that we hand selected, and they authorized the filing back on December 21st. So what Florida State is saying right now is, no. Look, you cited to a case that allowed for that proposition, that allowed you to relate back a vote, but that was over a technical business decision. For example, if we had 12 people vote to approve a purchase order and we needed 15 people to approve the purchase order, yeah, you can fix technical errors, minor errors, but you don't get to go back and start a whole ass new litigation. I'm sorry if this is a family show. A whole lawsuit,
but not often.
A whole lawsuit without taking any vote. So Florida State is here saying, look, we have case law on point that this isn't something you can fix. This isn't something you can go back and correct. When you act without having authority, it's like you never acted before. So one of the things the judge can say is the amended complaint that was filed in mid-January is the initial complaint that was filed, because that's when you had the votes to go ahead and file the suit. And we're going to ignore that December 21st filing, which then creates a situation where ACC loses their really only argument as to why the ACC should have priority in North Carolina.
Right. Yeah. So that piece of it with acting beyond the powers is the fact that they did not have the votes. They did it anyway, trying to go back and get the votes and say, see, we already had the votes. Now, those 10 schools, we probably already know who those 10 schools, and I know that I've read some stuff where Florida State is going to want to know who those 10 schools are. And that would be, I'm assuming that would come into discovery. Like ACC is not going to just hand over that list.
So that's what's fascinating about where we are today and why we're talking. The ACC, in filing their protective order, objected to all the requests that Florida State made. And one of those things that they asked for was who was present for the vote on January 12th. Now,
fair ask. Yeah.
If I was the Florida judge, the first question I would ask at the hearing is, you objected to everything. What can Florida State has? What do you have? What do you think is appropriate for discovery? Because I promise you, the discovery rules are very permissive. They're designed to allow not just for the determination of admissible evidence, but for the discovery of evidence that is likely to lead to other discoverable evidence. So the judges give wide latitude in discovery. They don't like getting involved in discovery disputes to begin with. So that's why I was surprised that we got such an early look into what's going on. If you want to ask me a question about why Florida State or how Florida State isn't playing nice, that dovetails perfectly into this situation.
That's coming next. That's coming next, because there's a lot of funny stuff that's actually in there that I love, by the way, about the snarkiness. I love it. Go ahead, Ryan. Get to that, and then I will ask my question.
So I want to know, they're both having these back and forths. Who is the decision maker on where the case will actually take place? Because you hear the Florida judges, you hear the North Carolina judges. Like, who makes that call?
So that is one of the trickiest questions that has plagued us since the very start of this situation. I would like to think the law is clear, but it's probably not. I would like to think the judges are willing to put aside their personal views and rule on the law. They probably won't be able to. And so as a result, we do have a chance for this to get very sloppy very quickly. Now, again, I said I went back and looked at the Maryland case as a barometer for what's likely to happen here. So in that case, they settled. We didn't get to all the litigation. We didn't get all the way through. But at least initially, North Carolina and the North Carolina Court of Appeals agreed that North Carolina should be the proper jurisdiction. So there's some reason, there's some basis for why the judge on March 22nd could rule that this should move forward in North Carolina. The question is what happens then on April 9th when the Florida judge also says, no, this case should move forward in Florida. I truly don't know the answer to that. I'm speculating. I've talked to a couple other attorneys. The theory is, first off, both of those decisions could be appealed. So both state courts and superior courts appeal that decision to the Court of Appeals. And then those Court of Appeals could either agree on North Carolina or Florida. But if they both agree that North Carolina and Florida are appropriate, I think there is a basis for both parties to then remove them to a North Carolina federal court and a Florida federal court, because you have a conflict between the two states. That's what I understand right now to be the basis for how this moves forward if both judges want to assert their authority.
Before we move on real quick, everybody wants to talk about this, right? Because all this new stuff that has come out. So I want to pull in. I just got a message from Nathan Brown. Here he is from
I'm here.
College Football Mafia.
Yeah.
And they are talking about this all the time on their shows too. So, and I know he's got a limited amount of time, and I wanted to make sure, Nathan, if you had anything specific you wanted to ask Doug, because I know you got a bolt soon.
Yeah, I got a meeting in like 6 minutes, but I saw you guys had Doug on. I'm like, well, I got to be there because he kind of big timed me a while ago, and so
oh boy,
I need to come on the show to say hi.
I'd love it. Let's get back together again. We're ready. We're ready to do it.
Right.
He's had his dinner. You've had dinner now.
I've had to have my dinner.
I have a very short memory. It doesn't really matter. I was just teasing.
Good deal.
But yeah, as far as all this goes, I know you guys are more focused on Florida State and the lawsuits and how that is being presented out in the college football world at large, which is what you mentioned, Vince. I think that what we need to make sure of is that when we take information that's actually been processed, or we're guessing. Either something is in a written account or it's a complete guess. And in today's world, there's no distinction between those things. Everybody's on Twitter pronouncing their own Karnak type declarations like Doug was just talking about, without anybody checking them. And so I come on here and you guys always tell the truth, and it really matters the perception that you're not trying to drive the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
You're just presenting the information. And that's what I think you guys are doing. And so for me, I just want to recognize that you guys are doing a great job, and I wanted to say hi.
Oh, great. I appreciate that. That's awesome. What's going on in your world later tonight? Nathan, you guys got a show?
We do. We have a show at 8:00, College Football Mafia, Big 12 Mafia, as Ryan said. And we're going to be talking realignment and all that fun stuff. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knew about it. I didn't actually come on to advertise the show. So
that's okay.
that was
it
an
works
extra.
out.
But it's mostly to say hi to you guys and know that you've got my 100% support. All three of you. When Doug's on, I try to, do those things. So I'm really looking forward to more of the stuff you guys are putting out.
Excellent. Well, thank you. And we'll see you a little bit later. Let us know if you need any help in your
I was looking for my rally towel, Nathan. I know I have it.
Yeah, I know
It's
you
within
should be sitting back up there, pride of place. All right, guys. It's great to see you. Have a great night, and we'll talk soon.
We'll see you.
Take care.
Okay, see you later.
Yeah, I just want to make sure because I think he's been wanting to come on and say hi and get him a chance to get in here. So
for sure.
if you're not watching College Football Mafia, Big 12 Mafia, good stuff, good people, good content, and you get a nice wide range of schools and things.
And they
like
dive
that.
deep.
So,
they've got analysis. I mean, they've got mathematicians, and they've got all kinds of capabilities of going deep on some of these issues.
They throw a bar chart up, and my eyes glaze over. So that's all you need to get me to go to sleep a little bit. So back to what you and Ryan were discussing, and I lost my question in that chaos. I lost my question. So I don't know. Are we to the
we were
point now
talking about the snarkiness.
Yes.
We were talking about the snarkiness and FSU and how they weren't playing nice.
Yeah. So I forgot my specific question, but I knew that's where we were going. So there's all kind of verbiage used in there about agonizing over the motion and familial ties and your son and your wife and all this other stuff. So as a legal expert, do you see that kind of snarkiness a lot? And if you do, is it only in like divorce stuff?
Largely in family law. One of the reasons I don't practice that.
Yeah.
No, look, the favorite tool of the litigator is to take the other side's argument and turn it on themselves. And so that's the sophisticated way of showing, look, the other person's wrong. Here, let me take you their words and show you why the exact opposite is meant by their words. The second favorite thing to do with litigators is to point out the idiocy of the other side. And we haven't had many opportunities to do the former, but FSU is twisting the knife repeatedly with the latter, just trying to show to the judge how silly and repugnant some of these arguments have been on the part of the ACC.
Yeah, one of the footnotes that you mentioned was about how the ACC wants all this stuff to be hidden so they can create their own distorted reality for the rest of the world to have their understanding of what's going on to actually be what they want you to understand about it.
The Florida state attorneys accused the ACC attorneys of deceiving the judge, of being deceptive. And that's a serious charge. At the end of the day, yeah, some of these are funny and some of these are good snark, but when you're accusing the other side of doing some things, you better be really sure that you can uphold that argument, that you can point out those details. And so what they're talking about here is ACC not wanting to share any of their agreements, any of their trade secrets, because they want to be able to tell the court what those documents mean. And that's what we're here for. That's what we're here to talk about. What do those documents mean? So I thought the FSU attorneys made a very good and valid snarky point about the fact that the ACC is trying to hide everything, and they really didn't want anything to be produced to the other side.
So, yeah. So when you're saying it's a very serious accusation, I mean, how do you can't really prove that they're being deceitful. You can only say you're only trying to nudge the judge to say, yeah, I'm not buying this.
That's true. You are nudging the judge at this point, but there is going to be discovery. There are going to be depositions at some point. If this case doesn't settle, there will be a trial. And the idea is that you're planting these seeds so that as the judge sees occurrences during the pendency of the litigation, he can be like, they were right. The ACC is trying to hide the ball. The ACC is being less than honest.
Another little quick phrase that I read was about the ceremonial compliance. Like, and you can spell that out, but the general idea is that if the ACC is going to hold their own bylaws in such low regard that they only comply with it when it's absolutely necessary or within their convenience, then why should anyone else have to abide by these things, right?
So here we're talking about the related back provision. And look, I've tried to be fair. I've tried to be, not a complete FSU homer in these discussions. And I said from the beginning, this idea that FSU asked in their original complaint at the end of every paragraph, Judge, if you agree with us, we want our exit date to relate back to August 13th or August 15th of 2023. I thought that was absurd at the time. You either are withdrawing like Maryland did, or you're asking the judge about the grant of rights because you want to withdraw. You don't get to then say, if we win, we withdrew back in August of 2023. Well, now that we've seen several filings and several motions and several opportunities for the ACC to strictly adhere to their bylaws and constitution, and they've failed to do so, that's when FSU is getting their dig in here. If we're going to be taking votes in January about litigation that started in December, and we're going to consider these to be ceremonial delicacies regarding how we're supposed to behave, then sure as heck we do want to relate back our departure to August of 2023.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's what we're going to do, let's go all the way back. Let's just make it up as we go along.
Sure. I do have a question. So, I heard and read mentioning of the ACC wanting exclusions about anything regarding the structure of the deal and the Raycom sports stuff. Can you get into that a little bit?
So there's two parts to the objections by the ACC. The first of which is some blanket objections, which is just, hey, everything we're talking about here applies to all the discovery questions. And then each individual discovery request has a specific objection, usually outlining some of the other stuff. Well, the one thing that they're including in the blanket objections is really twofold. The first of which is, Judge, we haven't even decided that jurisdiction is proper in Florida. We don't want to spend dozens of hours getting these documents together, hundreds of hours, because we're still not even sure if this case is going to go forward in Florida. Let me pause here and take a step back and talk about how this is one of the opportunities where Florida State is not playing nice. The same motion to dismiss and the same motion to stay is occurring in North Carolina. ACC and Florida State got together and jointly filed a motion or an order in North Carolina saying, look, because this is pending, we're not going to exchange discovery in North Carolina. Well, fast forward 10 days, 2 weeks later, when the opposite is true, we're now in Florida, and the ACC has filed its motion to dismiss. So they probably shot an email over to the FSU legal team saying, hey, just like we did in North Carolina,
we're ready to do it again.
Let's go ahead and agree not to exchange discovery. And FSU is like, FSU? Screw you. We want your discovery. We want the documents. So the ACC was caught off guard, and that's why they had to file this, probably in relatively short order, to request the judge to give them relief. Tell us, please, we don't have to answer all these questions, because the deadline falls before the April 9th hearing on the issue of the motion to dismiss. So truthfully, honestly, where is this going? I think the Florida judge probably grants some or all of the request to hold off. But the basis for that first request is we don't even know if this case is going to go forward. Now, you have to include all of your arguments. So the rest of the arguments are, these are overly broad, unduly burdensome. Those terms are often used in litigation. They're very common. The idea is overly broad simply states, I don't have enough idea of what you're looking for me to answer these questions. Well, that's nonsense. We want your Raycom deal. You know darn well what we're talking about when we say we want your Raycom deal. Unduly burdensome. This one has a little bit more merit because we're talking about every document, every email, every facsimile, every mimeograph related to agreements from 15 years ago that may not still be in the possession. That's hard for them to decide whether or not they're going to, or hard for them to produce because it's going to be spread all over the place. But the issue is that at the end of the day, you are required to provide the documentation that is requested so long as it's reasonably related to the claim. And that's where the third and final issue is the statute of limitations issue. We may not get, or we may not have a right to stuff from 2010 if the judge doesn't agree that the statute of limitations is still viable. If they say you're outside the statute of limitations for the breach of contract dispute, then nothing related to the breach of contract is going to be produced.
Yeah, I think that's probably, other than that, I think that's probably what the ACC is holding on to.
Yeah,
because I can't imagine if I'm a judge, right? I can't imagine that I'm going to be able to make sound decisions without the information and evidence at hand. So to me, that's, the statute of limitations, I think, is what the ACC is really banking it on so they can keep whatever it is secret they want to keep secret.
So it's a great opportunity to take a step back. There's so many documents, so many filings, so many things going on with both courts that I want your viewers to understand what matters right now. The ACC has asked the Florida judge to dismiss the complaint filed by Florida State in Leon County. So in order to do that, there's 3 steps to this process. The first thing is the complaint. So the complaint has to allege the elements of the breach of contract and the breach of fiduciary duty. So there has to be enough information in the complaint to say these are the standards that the ACC did not meet, and we have a valid argument. The second part in the motion to dismiss is the judge then presumes that everything in the complaint is true. So we're not even getting into whether or not this is true or isn't true. Right now, as we sit here today on March 14th, everything that FSU has said is true. And if everything that FSU has said is true, is there a controversy to be decided? That's all we're talking about for the April 9th hearing. So the question, it's very rare for a case to be dismissed outright. The motion to stay, that's a different story. That's where we hope that there's a victory in North Carolina. But it is almost impossible. Doesn't stop you from filing the motion to dismiss, but it's almost impossible to win on the motion to dismiss.
Yeah, it's almost like if you don't ask, you have to at least ask to try. Now, one thing I do want to, one of the most interesting parts of all this is Florida State really pushing the envelope on what did the ACC know or have involvement with ESPN during the college football playoff selection and how that impacts everything. So what are your thoughts on that?
Hold on, before you answer, Jim Phillips is all ready to talk about the basketball
ACC, yeah.
Is he not?
We need to have 2, 3,
Basketball
4 ACC teams.
Yeah.
Boy, he was ready for that.
Playoffs.
He was ready for that. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I think when my first semi-viral tweet was right after the McCullough McCullough statement that he issued. And I said, I want litigation. I want to know what was in those emails. I desperately want to know what's there. This is probably the most complicated and convoluted part of this claim, but it's also the most recent. I don't think that the college football snub was the reason why we filed suit, but it was the moment that the world knew the ACC was not a Power 5 conference.
So-called Power 5.
And that was the failure and the failing of the ACC. So I think that in a reasonable world, everything else is stripped away from this litigation. All the other fluff is taken off. And this failure of the ACC to maintain its stature and status as one of the premier programs is a failure on the part of the ACC, is the breach that you can specifically point to that says, another 10 years in this conference is not reasonable because the ACC didn't do what they were supposed to do. And it would be a very different situation if Sankey had 2 hours on College game day and then we had Jim Phillips at least do a half an hour on College game day about how important it is to have an ACC representative. But we had radio silence. They abdicated. They gave up. And now today they're voting to agree that they shouldn't have a full share of the playoff proceeds because they know that they are not on par with the SEC and Big Ten. That, I think, is really the strongest, most complete context for the argument that FSU has in this litigation.
And so saying all that is, it's not like the ACC, I mean, Jim Phillips could have said, you know what, the ACC getting 20% of the college football revenue split is not good enough, and we are not going to sign it. But the problem with that is this thing's going forward with or without the ACC.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like they're kind of put over a barrel.
Yeah.
So I can say, Jim Phillips, how dare you sign off on anything?
Mm-hmm.
Right? How dare you put us all at a larger disadvantage? I really don't believe he has any choice.
Jim Phillips should have seen this job from his ivory tower at Northwestern and said, no way in hell I'm taking that job.
I'm not taking that job. There's no way I'm taking that job. And that's all well and good. And whatever's going to happen is going to happen. But it's great for Florida State. I mean, if you think about it, like the fact that it's going to have more evidence that the whole world, it's laid bare for the whole world to see that this conference is not up to par.
Yeah, not only for Florida State, Vince, but with this being in the agreement, it also gets Clemson pissed off and other members of the conference pissed off. And we just heard, and I'm interested to hear Doug's opinion if he has any on Clemson being ready, quote unquote, being ready to they've been looking at this just as long as Florida State.
They want to do it behind closed doors because they want to do it the right way.
The right way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much in the way of opinions as to Clemson. Obviously, they're scared is the bottom line because you look at what's happened to Florida State, and that we've already been voted off the island by 10 members of the conference.
Right.
That means we haven't seen the minutes of that meeting, but we probably don't have any voting rights at this point. We're probably basically suspended from the ACC in every aspect except the actual competition of the games. And so as a result, the other teams in the conference are like, well, I don't want to get involved because we see what they did to Florida State. And I think there was validity to that position prior to January 12th. But once January 12th happened and 10 select members were handpicked for the vote, that meant that 5 members, Florida State plus 4 others, were not included in that vote. So who are those other 4 and where do they plan to be? What are they going to do? They basically at this point should go ahead and file their suit. And then that would put a whole lot of pressure on the North Carolina judge to realize maybe I don't want to hear 4 of these lawsuits in North Carolina business court. Maybe we want to go ahead and put this on ice and let Florida take care of it. Let South Carolina take care of it. Let the Miami-Dade jurisdiction take care of Miami or whoever else is going to leave. But I would be interested to see if one of the other teams steps forward before March 22nd, a week from now.
I mean, Miami might want to rent a lawyer a little bit north of the campus.
About an hour
north of the campus, and they can drive there and deal with it there. By the way, Doug, thank you. I know you're real busy, and I know, with the dinner thing and everything, but if anybody is in the comments and wants a specific question for Doug, if you want to pop it in there, I want to make sure viewers have a chance to ask their questions too.
Vince, the last question I have before turning it over to you and the viewers is, I guess, let's get into prediction time from Doug. So
okay.
Doug, I'm going to ask you to say up front, this is not Doug predicting based on his law experience necessarily, or putting his money on this side of the table. I'm talking about Doug, the Florida State fan who happens to practice law. So want that to be clear, because I know a lot of people will say, well, yeah, he's just the homer. Just put on your homer hat. What is the best case scenario here for Florida State that could happen in a reasonable amount of time in the next few weeks or months?
Mhm.
And what is the most likely in your opinion?
I appreciate you asking that as a homer, because as I've stated repeatedly, this is far afield from my area of practice. And I've only gotten up to speed because I've wanted to know what's going on. And I've wanted to be well-versed in the terms and what's being used. I think maybe Tuesday after the hearing, I think we'll have the hearing on Friday, March 22nd. I think the judge will take the weekend to think about it, probably Monday to read through some case law. He has a staff attorney that's going to validate and verify some of the information. I would expect Tuesday or Wednesday that an order is issued. And I would prefer to be pleasantly surprised that the judge agrees the ACC breached its bylaws and its constitution, and in doing so did not successfully file suit first. If he's going to take the next step and also agree then that the case should be stayed, I think that's a home run. I would put that chance at about 40% if I'm handicapping the situation, but that's what I would like to see. And then at that point, we'd have the April 9th hearing pending. First best case scenario is that at that point, the ACC gets real serious real quick, and we just go ahead and wrap something up before the spring game. I think that's probably about 10% chance of happening. I think what's more likely is we proceed with the April 9th hearing. The judge says, let's move forward in Florida. And then at that point, as we get into the discovery process through April, May, June, that we have some kind of an agreement for 150 million, 160 million before the first snap in Ireland. That's what I think is the most likely scenario. Now, I will say again, that's an accelerated timetable when compared to the Maryland case.
Mhm.
Maryland asked to be out January of 2012. They reached a settlement August of 2014 for roughly 70% of the buyout. And we're asking for a lot more of a discount than 70% of the buyout. So those are the other factors to consider. It may be something that goes on a little later. Worst case scenario, I shouldn't say worst case scenario. Second most likely is that ESPN forces the ACC's hand and says, look, you need a decision before we need to make a decision February of 2025. So they might be saying bowl season is the back end of the time frame where this decision can be made.
Before ESPN would even dream of signing on for additional years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'll take the first one, Doug. Can I pick the first one?
Sure.
That's the one I want.
We would all like that. Mm-hmm.
And I've got an idea of maybe what we should do here, and we'll talk about it offline. I don't want to give away some secrets. I've got an idea of what we can do in terms of kind of making this a little fun.
Just before I hopped on with you, I did see a rumor, not necessarily a reputable source, but somebody claimed that the 2026 Penn State schedule got leaked and it included Florida State on it.
I love it.
Oh,
I love
listen, it. Everyone loves a good rumor, right? Everyone.
I love it. It took me a long time to make that graphic, Doug.
Which graphic?
The Penn State schedule graphic. But that's awesome. And I would love, in this day and age, sometimes rumors, things that were rumors end up to have quite a bit of truth to them.
Mm-hmm.
After time goes by and people are able to vet that stuff. So who knows? That'd be great. Wasn't it the bookies that got the word about Florida State not being in the playoffs before everybody else? Yeah, absolutely. Oh, Douglas Zickafoos. Could we pay to get out? Then the rest of the schools get out cheaper or for free?
They could certainly get out cheaper. This is going to be a case-by-case analysis when it comes to the negotiations. I think it's unlikely. I think what's more likely is that FSU is setting the bar for departure, and that everybody else follows suit with whatever Florida State pays,
Yeah. If they can meet the bar.
if they're capable financially of meeting the bar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
Got
my
it.
last non-law question to you, Doug.
Oh boy.
Will you be
Non-law.
attending? Just curious. Will you be
Oh.
attending the spring game?
I will not.
Oh.
A bunch of other things are going on at the same time, and we just don't have the time. I am planning on going to Mecklenburg for the hearing next Friday.
Ooh.
Oh.
And so that's one of the free passes I'm getting from the family. So the spring game was not also included. I am going down for the Louisville baseball game. I'm going to be there Friday and Saturday for Louisville. That's the front end of our spring break. So we will get a chance to enjoy some Florida State baseball. But turning around and heading back down for the spring game was just not going to be something that worked in our
Doug,
schedule.
I don't need you to commit to now, but it would be lovely if on Friday, right after the hearing, you could hop on a special edition of Live from the Courtroom, Garnet and Old, even
Let's
for
do
5-10
it.
minutes. Come on, man.
I will have a 4-hour drive back to Atlanta, so I will have plenty of time
Audio
according
time.
to your schedule. You won't get my pretty mug while I'm driving down the road, but I will be happy to hop in audio only and talk about what we found out.
So Garnet and Old listeners, you heard it here first. Not immediately, but pretty soon after the hearing on March 22nd, we're going to pull Doug in on a show and get his thoughts on all of the legal mumbo jumbo and gyrations that happened, and hopefully the home run will be hit.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of home runs, Doug,
we would love that.
Home runs.
Baseball, 15-0, baby.
Let's talk about
whole lot of dogs.
We're going to move on from the legal talk, and let's do some diamond talk if you have a moment, Doug.
I do. Look, I'm an animal of Section B. I have long told the boosters if I can only participate in football or baseball, I would pick baseball over football. I'm that much of a baseball fan. I've done my time in the stands at every home game from 1993 to 2000, and I love my Section B animals.
15-0, and they've got a series with Notre Dame this weekend. Is that correct?
That is correct. Notre Dame, then Clemson.
And think about this: the pasting that occurred in Gainesville. That was a sight to behold. And if it wasn't for the center fielder trying to make a top 10 play catch, it would have been much worse.
Look,
what are your thoughts so far with the team?
It was a 1-pitch grand slam to one of their best hitters on the second pitch that the relief pitcher threw, and then he sat down the next 8 batters straight.
That's right.
If it wasn't for those 5 runs, that was a legitimate butt whooping. So thank goodness for that one bad pitch, or that would have been highly embarrassing. I'm still taking it as the pasting that it was without those 5 runs.
Absolutely. And people complaining about the team not being ranked, and I'm neither here nor there on that. If the team continues to play like they're playing, that's going to take care of itself.
Look, Kirk told us, don't worry about the rankings.
Oh,
don't worry about the rankings.
It all takes care of itself. Right. Unless we don't want you there, then it's Circus City.
It's the eye test, Vince.
It's the eye test. And if one of the guys gets hurt, then all bets are off.
Look, they're 15-0. I'll say this: they're 15-0. But truthfully, this was a big game because of the first 14 games. It was a subpar competition. We had the 99th ranked strength of schedule. There was a reason why we're unranked. That's fine. The ACC will take care of itself. As bad as the ACC is in football, allegedly, it's great for baseball. We've got 5 teams ranked in the top 25. If we take care of business in the ACC, we're going to be fine. And I will say right now, I'm looking for the post to put on Facebook or on Twitter. Mike and Link could be our generation's Bobby and Martin, Bobby and Levin. If the 2 of them are that committed, we already seen Mike Norvell pass on the Alabama job, then okay, what other job is he going to take? Okay.
Yeah, that's good news. It's
so
better.
If he passes on
Mike that sounds much better than
Mike and me.
Kiffin.
Yeah. So if FSU, if Mike Norvell has already passed on Alabama And Link loves Florida State like it's his,
And just getting started.
stepchild. Yeah. The two of them could legitimately successfully handle, hang on,
It's all right.
could legitimately handle the next 20 years of Florida State athletics in much the same way that Bobby and Martin handled those two teams.
I've enjoyed watching the baseball team thus far, and I, thinking about how the football team has kind of been turned around pretty quickly. The baseball team seems to have that going for them too right now. And again, they're not going to end up being 50-0. I get that,
right?
But you win a couple series in the ACC. That's not whistling Dixie. I mean, that's hard to do. So I'm looking forward to that.
Come on.
All right.
Basketball's done.
I'm not going to leave. I do want to keep with you, but I do have to kiss my wife because she just got home, and that's an obligation.
Go ahead. Hey, we've taken up enough of your time, Doug.
Yes.
No, I'm going to be right back.
All right. That's
unless
fine.
you want me to go. Do you want me to go?
Well, I think we're all out of topics.
We're all out of topics. We're gonna wrap the show up here, Doug.
Okay.
But
well, then I'm going to go ahead and head on out. We'll see you on the 22nd.
And I will be with you on the 22nd. Yep.
That was fun. Doug Rohan, ladies and gentlemen, one of the nicest Florida State fans who happens to be an attorney that we could possibly ask for. What a great time. And Vince, again, baseball team, doing its thing. FSU lawyers.
Softball team getting better. Softball team getting better. Basketball men's team done for the season. Yep. They did win a game in the tournament, which is great. The women's team won 2 games in the tournament and then, ran out of gas. And that's just kind of how it happens. The women's team will be going to the NCAA tournament and we'll know their seeding here at the end of the weekend. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on. And remember, folks, if you haven't already liked, subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do so. Ryan's got some money burn a hole in his pocket that he wants to spend on giving away a college football 25 game. And if we're hitting home runs here, also a console with a game. Ryan wants to spend some money on that. So like, subscribe, and share all that stuff. Ryan, we're going to get through all the banners here.
Yeah. Now, Vince, we will be, Garnet and Old will be at the spring game.
Oh.
420. We will be there. We will announce what lot we're in because Vince and I have different lots, but we will have a shared tent. And we will invite all of you to come say hello. And we will do a live episode post and pregame for the spring showcase.
It's a little loose, but it'll be fun.
It'll be fun. And Vince, this year I have a USB-C iPhone that can handle all our accessories.
The technology is finally catching up to us.
Yeah, no more iPad or computer. So please come on by, and we'll announce it later where we'll be. But if you're going to the spring showcase, look for the Garnet and Old logo coming to a field near you. We'll all be enjoying what will likely be a hotter than normal, I'm sure, spring game. And we'll all get to see players like DJU take the field and take
Marvin Jones Jr.
It's going to be awesome. So look forward to that.
Before we wrap up.
Yeah.
Send Chiefs all the damn time. It's what we should do. And if you are in the Northeast Florida area, I am leaving my house right now and going to Fishweir Brewing. We're going to go hang out at Fishweir tonight. So if you want something to do tonight, come on to Fishweir, have a beer with me and my family.
Where is Fishweir, Jack? Where is it at?
It's in the Murray Hill area
of Jacksonville, Florida.
If you're close by, I think they close at 10, so I gotta get on to getting here. But I just want to say, if anybody's in the area and you want to join, we can have a beer together. Send Chiefs all the damn time.
Send Chiefs all the damn time, and go Noles. Everyone have a great weekend. Enjoy each other. Vince, thank you so much for being part of one of the greatest FSU shows on planet Earth, the Garnet and Old Show. No inside info, no contacts, no problem, no doubts.
There's no doubts. We'll see you later, everybody.
You will.